In this video, we're going to take a look at how to insert headers and footers into a Word document. A header is something that appears on every page, or possibly every page, with the exception of the first page in a document, and a footer is something that appears on every page at the bottom in a document, and again, possibly with the exception of the first page. Common things to put in the header and the footer. Page numbers are obviously the most common thing. If you're doing a term paper, you may put your name on every page. You may put the title of the paper on every page. Sometimes dates and file names are included. Those are some typical things to put in the header or the footer. If you want to do a header or footer in your document, it's on the Insert tab, and it's in the Header and Footer group. And you can click on either one of these, depending on whether you want to put stuff in the header or the footer. Let's click on the header button here. And I always choose the first selection here, even though you've got a couple of other choices. This is probably the simplest one. It comes up with a placeholder for you that tells you to type text in. You can just hit the delete key and the placeholder goes away. What you should notice here is that whenever you do a header or a footer, there will be some default tab stops. If you have a normal margin selected, which is 1 inch all the way around, the tab stops will probably be in the right spots. The center tab here is precisely in the center of the page, and this right tab stop over here that's kind of hidden by the right margin marker is right on the right edge of the page. They may not be in those locations, so it's always a good idea to take a look at those tab stops, and if they're not in the correct locations, just drag them back and forth until they're where you want them to be. Also, if you would happen to get a first line indent here, you probably want to bring that back to the left edge. Otherwise, anything you type on the left part of the header or the footer will be indented, and you probably want it to be over here on the left margin. Okay, so what kinds of things we're going to put in here? Well, one thing that you may want to put in here would be the date and the time. When you're in the header and the footer, you notice everything else turns gray, and the header and the footer tools with the Design tab appear up here on the ribbon. And let's say that what I want to do here is I want to put in the date and the time. There's a button right here, and we've got a number of formats. You can put in either the date or the time or both of them. And there's also a checkbox over here that gives you the option of updating the date automatically. If you want to know when a document was printed, you might want to put this in. Every time you pull it up and send it to the printer, it'll have the current date on it. On the other hand, if you want to know when the document was created rather than printed, you should probably turn that off and just put the creation date up there in the header. I'm going to leave this turned on. We'll click on OK, and there's today's date. And you notice if I move the mouse over this, the whole thing turns kind of gray, which is Word's way of telling you that you didn't really type this in. There's actually a code there that it's using, to determine what goes in that placeholder. Now let's hit tab once. It takes us to the center of the page here under this center tab stop at the 3 1/4 inch mark, and I'm not going to put anything there. Let's hit tab one more time, and let's do page numbers over here on the right side. And again, we're going up to the header and footer tools, the Design tab, and under page number, we're going to current position, and I always pick the first one here, just a plain number, and it'll put in a number for me. And again, if I click on that, notice it all turns gray, again telling us that we didn't type that in. It was calculated by Word and placed there for us. Now, if I want to get down to the footer, I can just scroll down here. That's usually what I do, and then just click down here and put whatever you want in the footer. There's also an option here, a button that'll let you go to the footer, and it'll put the cursor down there for you and do a little bit of scrolling for you. Let's say, well, we've already got at the top are probably two of the most common things. There's also something here called Quick Parts, though. Let's take a look at that. And there is a field option here, and if you look here, there's a bunch of things that you can put in here. Most of these you're never going to need. The one we're going to take a look at today is the file name. If you click on file name, it gives you the several choices here for how you want that file name to appear. You can add the path, which is a list of all the folders that it's in. And we're going to click on OK here. And what we get is the name of the file. If you look up here, that's the name of the file. And again, click on that. The whole thing turns gray. It's a code. And if you were to save this file and change the name of it, you may have to right-click on this and tell Word that you want to update the field. And let's see what else we have. Those are the basics. Those are the things you'd want to put in most of the time. If you want to get out of the header footer, just double-click up here. This turns black. The stuff in the header footer turns gray. Also, another way to get out, if you're up here in the header or the footer, just click on the Close Header and Footer button up here, and it'll take you back into your document. The header and footer will apply to the entire document if your document is only one section. If you divide your document up into multiple sections, the header and footer will carry over from one section to the next, but if you want to change it in section 2 to be different from section 1, you can do that. If you want section 3 to be different, you can do that, and so on. An example where you might want to do that would be if you were typing a book and it was divided up into chapters and you wanted to have a different heading at the top of every chapter. For example, you might want the chapter name. And if that's the case, the way to do that is to make each chapter into its own section. Simply put a section break before the first character in each chapter, and then when you've got multiple sections, you can set individual headers and footers for each section. Now if you go back and take a look here, there are a few other things up here that you might want to play with, but we've pretty much covered the basics for doing headers and footers in Word.